So, hello and welcome to another episode of the Online Entrepreneur Academy podcast. And this morning, as we record on my summer morning, spring morning, it's my pleasure to welcome Frankie Bryant. So, Frankie, over to you. Could you introduce yourselves to our guests? Because I know you've got so much to tell us.
Oh, good morning to you. Good evening from me in Australia. My name's Frankie Bryant, and I was born in the UK and grew up with a desire to travel. That was the only thing I really ever wanted to do. People talked about being nurses and firemen and stuff, and I was like, nah, I'm packing my bags and I'm going. Whilst between school and university, I just got a part-time job and then discovered that instead of going to university for 3 years and possibly getting a job overseas, I could actually work in a casino for a year and a half and definitely go overseas. So I ended up not going to university and I stuck out. To go overseas at that time, you had to be 21 and have a year and a half's experience. So I went for my first interview for an overseas job when I was 20 and I had a year. So I wasn't old enough and I didn't have enough experience. But I thought my friends were going. I've always been one to... Yeah, exactly. I've always been one to seize the moment. And so off I went, did my interview, had nothing. But 6 months later, I still wasn't old enough. I wasn't 21. But one Sunday I got a phone call saying, we've got a job for you in America, but you have to be here in 6 days. Now, at that point, I'd bought my own apartment again. And lots of people said to me, oh, you bought your apartment now, you're not going to travel. And I was like, in my head, watch me. So I had 6 days to quit my job, pack up my life, get my visas, go across, which I achieved. But it was probably set the tone for me. Is I see an opportunity and I go, why not?
Yeah, love that.
And I think I see a lot of people miss things. And there's lots of good reasons why it's really hard to accept an opportunity when it comes up. But I think that mindset has served me really well all my life. And so my first why not was off I went to America and I worked on and off on cruise ships on and off for 10 years in the casinos. And I also worked, so when Eastern Europe was still Eastern Europe, I went out there and my criteria for my new contract, so we would do a 6-month contract and then you take us, or 6 or 9, and then you take as long off as you could on your money. And then when you ran out of money, you'd ring them up and get another job. And
makes sense.
I traditionally would turn down jobs in places that I could go on holiday. So I turned down a job in Denmark, not because I didn't want to go to Denmark, but because, and I accepted a job in Poland, which was just after communism had gone down. So I went out there and had a bit of a crazy time in what was effectively still Eastern Europe at the time, still communism, still there was rationing. So all these I was about experience, it was about travel, it was about, is this somewhere I can go that I won't be able to go otherwise, or is it a moment to be there? So I was actually in Berlin when the wall went down. It's a whole nother story. One of the things, and please stop me if I go on too long, but I can tell the story. So I'm well known amongst my friends for coming out with crazy stories. But anyway,
love them.
So I worked in the casinos and then accidentally got sent to Australia. Well, it was in Africa and got sent to Australia and didn't want to come because in my thinking, I can go there on holiday any day where I would want to go. But the way things evolved in Australia, Africa, so we would go over and establish a casino and then gradually train ourselves out of a job and train the locals up so that they could run their own businesses. And so my job was next to go. So I got sent to this prime job in Australia and I went kicking and screaming. And 20 years later, I'm still here.
It wasn't such a bad thing then.
No, it wasn't such a bad thing at all. And I had always been looking for somewhere to settle down. So what I'm trying to illustrate here is my whole working career and my initial phases were around traveling. That's what I want to do. That's what I did. Once I settled down in Australia a little bit, I actually got tripped over by an Australian and got married and settled down. And then I discovered that I didn't really like the industry I was in anymore. So I started looking for another job. And it's very difficult in Australia, it's a very well-paid job, unlike England. I don't know, England may have changed, but when I was in England, it wasn't a well-paying job. But in Australia, it was very well-paying and you didn't need a lot of education and it was very hierarchical. So you had to come in at the bottom and work your way up, no matter how your experience was. So it was atypical in that I got offered jobs at quite a higher level. So I ended up in Sydney. We opened up the casino in Sydney after doing a couple of others. And I was in charge of training and development. Having been working on the operations side, I went into the training side, and which was a theme throughout my career. It's always been about training and people and management and leadership and all that kind of thing. So rather than a consistent type of work, it's been about the way I add value to what I do. So I was earning a substantial salary. I was writing my own hours. I was managing training and development for 2,000 staff. I was a success. I should have just sat there fat and happy for the rest of my life, but I was so miserable. It's the most miserable I've ever been.
Really?
Didn't like and I think there'll be a lot of people that will identify with being trapped by other people's expectations.
Yes,
so
that's very
true. And I remember clearly saying to myself, you're an adult, you need to grow up. Once you're an adult, it's not all fun and games anymore. You can't run around living on pretty desert islands or going diving every day and having your side job as you work. And it took me a few years to come out of that. And I think it just got to the point where I started looking for another role, and it was very hard for people to see me as anything other than a casino. And what's your typical idea of what someone who works in a casino is? It's either something very regimented or it's Al Capone, take them out the back and break the legs. And I've worked in both sides of those kind of casinos, but that's not me. I was a bit lost for a while, and then I found a book that I would highly recommend, which is called What Colour Is Your Parachute, which is around, I firmly advocate that everybody, if you're thinking of a life change or a career change, what you need to know is not what is your skill set that you're good at.
Yeah.
So you can translate that into other roles, but not only what are you good at, but out of that, what do you love doing? What lights you up? What gets you out of bed in the morning? And in my experience over the years since then, it's not a consistent, there's a consistent theme, but it's not always. So in this particular change of industry, I realized that what I really wanted to do was find some people that I wanted to work for.
Yeah, makes sense.
It was about, and here's my skill set, and where can I take that? So I went, and one of the other things I learned was that you don't get a job by applying for it in the paper. If you can do this kind of process, and I know you're about entrepreneurs, and I will get to that. It's a bit long-winded, but you don't get something.
No, this is all very relevant.
You don't get it by going in the newspapers. You get it by. So an example was that of me wanting to work for a particular kind of person. I was really interested in politics. So I went to the New South Wales Parliament, and I managed to get some contacts there and just said to a couple of people, is it okay? Do you have 5 minutes? Can I buy you a coffee and find out what you do? Because I think it's really interesting. I'm interested. And people want to talk about themselves and I'm not being mean. I'm happy to talk about what I do. You're happy to talk about what you do. And when someone takes an interest, you'll be amazed how many people will set aside 10 or 15 or 20 minutes of their day to have a cup of coffee with a complete stranger and talk about what they do.
And someone who's listening, that's the point, isn't it? They're listening to what they say.
And I think if you're someone, like, I know that you work very much in that helping people develop phase. And if you're that kind of a person, you're also really happy to talk to people about, and this is my path, this is what worked for me. Here, have it, pick the bits that will work for you and off you go, which is pretty much what happened. So anyway, I ended up getting a job with a new airline that had recently set up in Australia, whose name would be very familiar to everyone. At the time, it was called Virgin Blue, which is a bit of an Aussie joke, but I won't go into that. So I joined them 3 years into the journey, and I ended up staying 13 years. I went from 3 figures, comfortable salary, to 45,000 a year. I went from Sydney, which I loved, where all my friendship group were, to Brisbane, and I was never happier. I was happy. I was doing something. We grew 3,000% in the first 2 years, I think. The airline went nuts. And then I worked my way through, was originally brought on board to design online training. When I got there, they hadn't got anything to design it with, and so while I was running a project to find a tool to design it, this was 2003, so it wasn't as common as it was now.
No.
But while I was doing that, I ended up getting heavily involved in leadership training, which is I love development and training and things like that. As I said, that's a common theme. And so I'd be sitting in front of groups of operational people and they'd all be going, yeah, you're brilliant and you train it really well, and here's your happy sheet at the end of the course, but it doesn't work like that in the real world. And I'd be like, yes, it does. And I could clearly remember so many different groups, engineers and ground crew and all these kind of people. Don't work like that in the real world. And I said, okay, sorry, I'm going to show you. So a job came up in an operation and I applied for it. And for the first time in my life, I didn't get it.
Oh, no.
And I was like,
What?
what? What do you mean you don't want me? Do you know what I've done? Do you know where I've been? I can tell you some stories. Anyway, so this was another big step for me in my self-realization, I think, was to go, okay, you learn more about people through what they don't get than you do through what they do. So what I did was I waited for the dust to settle and then I booked a meeting because it was an internal job, obviously. Right. So I booked a meeting with the head of airports and I fronted him and I said, hey, you didn't want me, but I still want the job. So I was a bit cheeky. I said, but again, I really want the job. What was it? This is my feedback. What do I need to do to show you that I believe I've actually got that? What do I need to do to show you that I've got it? And we had a good old conversation. And then about a few months later, a job came up running shift manager at Brisbane Airport. And I didn't even apply for it. He rang my boss and said, can I have her? And my boss went, yeah, go on then. And I ended up. What I learned from that is, again, if you don't get something, go find out why. Talk to people. Yeah, because a lot of times people, jobs and roles and opportunities are so they have someone in mind before they put it out there. And it's not being mean and it's not cheating the system. It's just what it is.
Reality, isn't it?
Yeah. So put yourself in that position to be that person. And I think from an entrepreneurial point of view, it would be very much go and talk to people. Put your big girl pants on or put your big boy pants on and go say, someone you admire, just contact them and ask. And what's the worst that's going to happen? You don't hear anything.
Yeah, exactly. When you put it like that.
Yeah. So anyway, so I went through the airlines and I ended up. So I was designing online training. I did ground crew. Then I got headhunted by cabin crew. And then there was a new role in flight crew and I got the role in flight crew. So for the last 7 years of it, I managed pilots, and which was hilarious. Because the guys that fly these big, expensive machines and they think I'm the boss. Anyway, but through that, I actually met my current business partner, who's a pilot. And we connected very much on a values kind of basis. And we were both a bit, if you see an opportunity, give it a go. And he's very entrepreneurial. And he would often ring me up and say, hey, how about we do this? So we started off with a little pot of money. And it was a side job, and we did bits and pieces. So we bought a plane. Another story.
Just let me stop.
Back from the
we bought a plane without.
We didn't pay for it, but we bought it.
No.
So at the time, the mining boom was on in Australia, and so Jeff's constantly talking to people. These guys wanted a plane, so we went and bought a plane. So I learned how to buy a plane, which was really interesting. Got it back from the States, sold it to them, made a bit of money, bought a house, renovated the house, subdivided it, made a little bit more money. And then in 2019, a friend of Jeff's, who was a fishing captain, we talked to him a couple of times, but we'd just come out of the property deal. And then the usual story, Jeff rings me up and goes, there's a fishing trawler and we've got Timmy. If we buy it, he'll crew it for us. So that was 2019. So that was my first trawler in my fleet. And I've now got 7. Oh, I've got a fixer-upper as well, so make it 8. And then that started us on a pathway to owning our own business. Now, just to be, this is why I said to you when we talked before that I consider myself an accidental entrepreneur, because I always, I was so firm. I don't want to work for myself because I work really hard for someone else. And I'm scared that if I work for myself, I'm going to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And
understandable.
So all this playing around was just fun. It was just like, by plane. Haha, that'll be a laugh. I wonder how we do that. Oh, let's renovate this house. Wonder how that works. Because I like to learn as well. I'm a continuous learner. And I
was going to say, that's the message of learning each time you do something, aren't you? And developing those skills and the training. Learning on the job, learning on the project, I would say.
Absolutely. And the one thing I've learned is every time the one thing. Another thing I've learned is every time you do something, like, it's amazing how you build this portfolio. If you're open to learning and skills, you build this portfolio of skills that you don't even know you've got. And this is where it's so important. So your audience, I visualize as people who are on this cusp or taking the path to trying to realize, what are they good at? What do they do? How are they going to maybe put it into a side hustle, and then maybe. And what I'm saying is, you probably got to just, as I said, put your big girl pants on and give it a go. If you see something, have a go, because you'll be amazed at what you can find in yourself or what you've learned. People will say to you, oh, there's this thing that people say to me, oh, there's this thing, and oh, but can you do that? And I'll be like, of course I can't. And then I'll be, oh, hang on a minute. Yeah, oh, yeah, probably could. So I think a lot of it's about confidence and not being afraid.
100%.
Sorry, I keep talking over you.
No, because there's also a little time gap in our cross-continental internet. But that's really so important, isn't it? Because probably most of us can do things, and that's a great message for our audience to hear. And it's just digging. It sounds a bit like a cliche, but it's digging deep, isn't it? And just saying, yeah, I can do it. I know I can.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're a teacher.
Yeah.
And if you apply for a role as a teacher and the role is painting walls. Oh no, not painting walls. Teaching people to. No, sorry. The job is. I'm trying to think of a good analogy and I can't. But something like managing a team to paint a wall.
Yeah.
They get the guy that's used to paint the walls really well, whereas they'd actually be much better off with you. But they see you as a teacher and not a painter. But when you talk about, if you go to talk to them about what they do, and you go, okay, as part of my role, I get people together, I understand their expectations, I talk to them, whatever it is that you do as part of your process, you're painting a picture for that person about who you are. And this is, again, what I was going back to with the breaking down what are you good at and what you do. Once you figure out what you're good at, you'll be amazed how many industries you can take it to.
Yes.
A good project. Sorry, go on.
No, so I love the idea of transferable skills, because to your point there, what you're good at, and that I'm interrupting you now, that goes across so many industries. Sorry, Frankie, carry on.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I get very passionate about this stuff because I
That's
see a
good.
lot of people. A lot of people have to me, have a frame of mind that says, an archaeologist, I am a pilot, I am a casino dealer, this is who I am, and I'm in this box and I can't get out because nobody wants a casino dealer to work in an airport. But when you actually break down what you do, casino does a perfect example.
Yeah, go for it.
Trustworthy, great customer service, very good conflict resolution skills. If you break it down like that, and then you take all of those pieces, there's 100 industries that you can go and work for, or there's a whole heap of different roles that you can take on. And almost as important, by the way, is what you don't like, because you try and avoid being part of that. But anyway, just quickly to finish off my very long story about how I got where I am. So once we bought the fishing trawlers, we also bought a little business pottering around on the river here, maintaining moorings, installing moorings, and the navigation lights, the little blinky lights that you see, we do all of that. And then my business partner, who never saw a challenge he didn't want to take on, saw a contract. Oh, I missed one business. I was in archaeology as well, but
we'll circle back to that.
We'll circle back to that later. But he never saw it. So he saw this government contract to clean up rivers. And he gave it to me and said, can we go for this? And at the point, we had one boat, we had one full-timer, and we weren't even working in the business. We had day jobs. And I wrote a tender that one made us look bigger than we were. I can give people hints on that if anyone needs them. But yeah, we won it. And so that was November 21. And within 3 months, that was just a maintenance contract, pottering up and down, cleaning up trash from floods and stuff. Within December, the first flooding started. By January, big floods had hit. And then by March, they hit again. And the government rang us up and said, can you help? And we just said, okay, because we always say, why not? See it, do it. Yeah, that's right. And look, what's the worst that can happen? You say you can and you can't. You say, oh, sorry, I can't. It's never happened so far. But you'll be amazed that once you say you're going to do something, you really get stuck into it and have a go. Anyway, we ended up, so there was huge floods, and it took us, one river, it took us 9 months to clean it up, and we were pulling containers out of trees, we were pulling cars out of the river. We learned to do things as we went. And I was working a full-time job as a general manager at the archaeology firm, and I was working another full-time job for myself. So I did what I never said I was going to do, and I quit and went and worked for myself. And I've worked for myself since 22, 1st of April 2022. And I was 100% right. I've never worked so hard. I was also wrong in that I have enjoyed it. I enjoy it. And I think we're in a bit of an evolution. So for our first few years, we were on the tools. Because both of us are quite clever problem solvers, we're often there, the way, especially Jeff, but myself too, the way we look at a problem is different to how other people do. So we felt like we had to be within our businesses, but now we're moving away from that, and we're bringing in good people to work for us. And so we've now got, I think we're up to about 6 different companies. The latest one, we just bought a boat building company. And the common thread in all our businesses is more seeing a problem that can be resolved and done differently. So it's not about a particular, we're not boat builders or we're not trawler fishing people. We're like a lot of our themes around water, but not all of them. Like we've got some land development stuff going on, but it's just about seeing things. And we have very common values, which is very important to us, to our success, is that Jeff and I are very different people, but we come to the same end, and we start from the same point and we come to the same point. We just do it very differently. And that's really been instrumental in keeping us going. And I still don't completely consider myself an entrepreneur. I'm trying, but I don't in that I probably wouldn't have done this on my own. I would have just kept tinkering around the edges because it's hard on your own. It's really hard.
That is the loneliness of an entrepreneur, isn't it? No team around or no one they can really talk to. So go back to, you said value is very important, isn't it? I picked up on that.
Yeah, so we have quite a number of and we're still articulating them, and they, over time, I've started putting words around them, but it's a grown understanding. So my business partner and I have never been romantically involved, but we've been best mates since we met, and we spark off each other. We've known each other for now 15, 16 years this year, and we've always had the same values, but we've realised it more over time. So for an example of our values is, so my workforce looks like my community. I need to offer opportunities to people. It doesn't matter who you are. And often when I talk to, we recruit a lot through agencies. So there's a lot of, they call them disability agencies, but it's a lot of it's people who can't read and write, traditional workforces that can't get jobs, or people approaching retirement, Indigenous, people with criminal background or prison backgrounds. And we believe that you need a mix of people to have a good job. And we believe everyone gets a second chance. Don't get a third. You get your second. Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't care what you did before you came to work for me. I do not care. What I care about is, are you engaged? Are you doing your best? And I just did a big project out in Western New South Wales, and my oldest worker was over 60. And my youngest worker was 16 or 17, I think. Just barely had a driving license. But over time, in the beginning, they're all like, and especially as we have a lot of males. I try and get girl germs involved with my boy germs because you need a balance. But over time, the young guys came to really respect him because the older guy he just worked and just got on with stuff. And so that's one of our values, is about people. And the reason why we're in a very remote regional part of New South Wales is to bring employment into the area. And one of our other values is everybody gets a piece of the action, but don't get greedy. So if we will share, we'll bring you in. So an example of that is we had a fishing trawler skipper who was very smart and very together. So he had been a diver in a previous life. When we started trying to clean up the rivers under the water, we got a company, set him up and gave him a third of it. Because who gave you your start? Somebody's got to give you your start. And so many times when there was just the two of us, People wouldn't give us money. We had business deals that we knew were going to make money, but we couldn't get a loan to get them across the line because they didn't understand what we did. And I think that's where we're at the moment, is bringing these good people in. So the boat building company we've just bought is called Voyager Catamarans. We've brought a young couple in who are amazing. They're amazing. And they want to work hard and they want to get in the business. And so, again, we've got ourselves in there, and they've got half the company, because without them, we don't have a company. So we've invested. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, bringing what was the phrase you used? Your workforce reflects the community you're in, yeah?
Mm.
Yeah, and bringing in younger people, but not say younger people, bringing in other people who are invested in what you're doing in the group project. What an opportunity.
It doesn't matter what you look like. And I think one of the things I've learned as well is giving lots of people opportunities. Some people will let you down. Of course, it'll happen. But you're never going to get someone who works as hard for you as someone who you give autonomy to within reason, and where you recognize talent and things like that. So that's really, I think that's a really important, but I'm probably at a stage now where, so we've always reinvested everything in our business. We really don't take, as you can tell, because we just keep, I don't know when we're going to stop. Who knows? Don't know how many businesses. But we've built a really strong advisory team around ourselves. We've been very lucky over the years. So it's really good. But yeah, it's really important. We're at that stage where we're reinvesting in other people who have vision. And another lady we helped, we've done a bit of sort of angel investing in a very small way, putting money into a lady who had a idea for a clothing business, and then just stayed with her until she got herself off the ground, and then off she goes. She's doing well for herself and stuff like that. I'm sure there's people out there like that. I think networking is critical, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about people we know. And you've done this all, when I think about it, since you started working for yourself, that's quite a short time span, isn't it? So the message that people are hearing, it doesn't necessarily have to be big in terms of big machinery, as you've done, like the trawlers. And circle back, how do you get from 1 to 7 trawlers? How did that happen?
So because every time we got enough money, every time a fishing trawler came up, we would try and find enough investment to buy it. So we had a business plan. I'm sorry, yeah, that's probably the critical. So when we started in 2019 with the one trawler, we sat down and had our business meeting and went, okay, what's the plan? And we're going, all right, 5 trawlers in 5 years. That was our business plan.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's clear that there is a plan there, but you're planning and you're following through so quickly and so effectively. And probably I'm sure that goes back to all the experience that you've gleaned over the years and the various different jobs you've had and the training. And this
It's
is
also about luck.
Say again?
It's about luck as well.
Luck, yeah. But you make your
I
own
think you make your own luck. Everybody, it's about seeing an opportunity and going for it. And I think that's why having 2 of us is so much easier, because if I see something and I say, what about? And then we'll have a chat and then we'll go, oh yeah, go for it. Let's have a go. And so the other thing about certainly myself as well, I was very fortunate in my 20s to learn that being rich isn't everything. And that's because I was working in poor countries where I was getting paid a lot of money. And so I was fortunate to know at an early age that having a certain amount of money is non-negotiable. You need to have enough to pay your bills. You need to have enough to keep yourself ticking over. But then after that, the more you get, it honestly, because in Eastern Europe, I was extremely well off by Eastern European standards. So we're not really focused on money. And we're more focused on a sort of, so it's about opportunity. It's about looking at something and going, I can do that better. It's about how can I benefit people around me? And these are my values. Yeah. So I think the critical thing as well is, and sometimes when I get an employee that doesn't work out, we talk about it and I just say, look, those are your values, but they don't fit in with us, but they'll fit in with someone else. It's just not how we operate. So I think the people that you're working with, it's really important to know, try and figure out your values as well. Because we all know what our values are. We just don't necessarily have the time or take the time to put them down.
Yeah.
But yeah, once you know your values, then you can really target places that fit in with those values and people that fit in with those values, and then go forward that way. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
It does make huge sense. And I think it gives a point of clarity to a lot of people who may be already starting out on their own, or making that change to work more for themselves. And yeah, if you employ or work with someone, business partner, who's got the same values as you, it's it seems a clearer way forward. That's what I'm hearing.
Mm,
It's a much,
mm,
much clearer way forward. And then other things become, when you're looking at an employee, other things become not less important, but starting from the place of values makes huge sense. I think that's incredible advice.
mm.
And the other thing I noted what you've been talking down about is spotting opportunities. And the opportunities are always changing, aren't they? Always
They're
changing.
always there. You just have to. I think that's going back to what we're saying about your audience want to take advantage of opportunities, otherwise they wouldn't be here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's about having the confidence to have a go.
Mm.
And my question to myself is, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
We've always tried really hard to scale our businesses. So my river business, obviously, the big work comes from emergencies, from floods and things like that. So it's very like this. So we've always built our business so we can scale it up and scale it down. And as I said, I'm really realistic that you need to have a plan in place to have your baseline financial needs met.
Yeah.
But then the rest of it is just give it a go. So if you see an opportunity, have a go at it. Say, what's the worst that can happen? And how can I take advantage of this opportunity? You need to take risks, but you need to be also mindful of the risks that you're taking. So you're not reckless. Like, we went to buy a plane. It was somebody else. We got them to give us the money to do it. So the worst that could happen was that we didn't get a plane. And the most that could happen was I got a couple of flights to the States. I got to run around a few airfields. I got to test a few. I didn't fly them, but I got to go out. You know what I mean? But the worst
Yeah,
that happened was that it didn't happen. So I think it's about opportunity. And I think one of the other things I often think about is that my 20-year-old self, absolutely terrified going to the States.
Mm.
I packed up my life in a week, left my job, left all my friends,
And
got
off
on
you.
a plane, went to America. There was so many, and there was days before email and mobiles and blah, blah, blah. I was lost in America.
Had to write a
But
letter home in those days to get information.
yeah, that's right. But a week later, I was on it literally, in actually less than a week, 5 days later, I was on the beach in the Caribbean learning to dive, which I'd
Wow.
always wanted to do as well. And looking back on how easy it had been, and it's always easier from the other side. And that's the thing I think, when you look at something and it's really scary, you can say, okay, but on the other side, it's going to be fine. So let's just give it a go.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And those sort of checks and that you've mentioned, it isn't recklessness, as you say, it's what's the bottom line, what's the worst that can happen? Does it work out financially? If it doesn't work out, are you covered? You're not bankrupting yourself by
Mm,
taking
mm.
a risk. No, amazing
Can I
advice.
add one thing to that as well? Because I
Please
think,
do.
yeah, just about another thing and again, I talk a lot about jobs and careers because I never thought about working for myself. So but I have met so many men. Like, I've worked in businesses where there was a glass ceiling, absolutely. But a lot of times the glass ceiling was women going, I don't want to do that. I don't want to work those hours. So self-selecting out as well. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying that being a female in a business world is easy and being a man is harder, but for a lot of the men out there who are in your audience,
Mm.
I think it would be very hard for them to make that decision to jump completely, because men generally, I'm sweeping generalization, but are raised to be the breadwinner, to bring up the family, to do all these kind of things.
Yes.
My
Yeah.
experience from managing pilots who were getting paid lots of money, but a lot of them had got to you quickly get to the pinnacle of the job quickly, but you did it the way Virgin Group we did. But they'd get to be captain of an airline. They'd get a lot of money, and they were like me when I was working for myself for Star City, just miserable.
Wow.
If there's someone out there who's thinking, I can't possibly take that leap because I've got to provide for my wife and my family, and there may be some women in a similar situation, I just don't know. But go and talk to the people that are close to you. I was very lucky because I was able to drop my 3-figure salary to go to 45 grand because I was the only person around to deal with that. So by that time, I was not with my husband anymore. So I had myself. So the fact is, I went back to having no money to pay the rent and nothing else. But you'd be surprised, I think. I've seen and coached other people through that change, especially, like I said, senior guys in the airline and pilots. The people that love you would rather see you happy on a smaller income. Again, like I said, I'm not unrealistic. You need your baseline, but they would rather you were happy. So why not talk? If you see an
Yeah.
opportunity, why not have a chat with someone, say? And the other proviso on this is that I am a change person. I do love change. So it's easier for me to see the opportunity and go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's such a good point. And maybe there's this assumption in a partnership that one person or both are the breadwinners, but they never get the chance to talk and say, is this what we really want? And we've all
Mm.
had fantastic success stories of people having these conversations and yeah, let's pack up and let's put the kids in a camper van and go around the world a bit.
Mm.
And it's not done in a frivolous way. I'm making it sound frivolous, but it's
Mm.
that, say it's that conversation. And to your point, I clearly remember a colleague losing their job and his wife saying to me, I'm so glad he's worked all his life. He's 40, he needs a break. And they made that into an opportunity, to your point.
Mm.
But it was a
Mm.
forced conversation and it was a great one. No, you don't have to go and
Mm.
get a job straight away. So yeah, very that's such a, and thank you for bringing it up. I like you, I'm passionate that we can change if we want to and if it works for the individual, the family, but
Absolutely.
have
Yeah.
that conversation. Don't need to work. No one's going to put on the gravestone. They worked hard. It's
And that's the thing. And the other thing is, look, and you are obviously closer to education, formal education than I am, child education. But I had no clue what I wanted to do when I left school.
who
I
does?
had one of the things I would love to do is go back, and I actually have been to a few high schools because I'm in STEM. So I get invited every now and again to go and rave on about being a woman in a man's world and how great it is. And I go to high school sometimes, and I always try and talk to the kids like, what do you like doing? What do you want to do? And have you thought a bit of this? And have you gone here? Because so often you follow your parents into a profession because that's all you know.
Or the
And who
parents tell you what you're
chose?
going to do.
Yeah, that's even worse. And who it makes a choice at 19 that wouldn't probably make a more nuanced choice at
Yeah,
40?
exactly.
And who knows, maybe, and again, I'm using the husband wife because I do generally see the men being more trapped generally with my experience in the workforce. The guys are more trapped. But maybe that your partner wants to actually step up and do, like you said, with the lady who stepped up with the redundancy. It was like, oh,
Yeah,
great. Okay, I'll go do something for a while and let's figure it out.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm passionate that this road, there's a lot wrong with education, and we won't go down that sort of big conversation now, but why are kids being forced into, you've got to go to university? It is a route for some,
Yeah,
100%, but it's
yeah,
not the only way.
yeah.
And
Oh,
for me,
100%.
yeah, and I sort of, I'm working with adults when I say, please have this conversation with your young people. Maybe they don't want to go to university now, maybe they go later, maybe it's not relevant, but have that
Mm,
conversation because there's so many opportunities, as you did, just getting into a job, taking an
yeah.
opportunity, and look where you
Well,
are now.
I didn't have a degree. I never did an undergrad degree.
You didn't need to do it
Um,
because you were doing other
no,
things.
I was busy doing the School of Life, but I actually went back and did one. I did a master's when I was 45 or something. Can't remember. And loved it. Loved every minute. Loved learning how to learn. Learning how to learn properly was really interesting. But I would honestly not. So I have no kids of my own, but I have lots of nephews and nieces are all my friends, and I tend to be that annoying auntie that takes them out in the ocean because I'm a big ocean swimmer and stuff like that. So I tend to take them and stuff and those kind of things. But I have a lot of conversations. Honestly, if I had children, I would be saying, you're not going to university until you've got a trade. Once you've
Yeah.
got a trade, then you can go, because a trade, I've seen people freed by having a trade because they can go and they set their own business. They can work for someone else or they can go and work for themselves. And if you want to surf all day, just get yourself, be a carpenter. I've seen it happen so many times. Be a carpenter, morning and evening. That's when everybody wants you. And then go surfing all day or whatever. But
Yeah,
yeah, you're absolutely right. There are lots of different ways to get.
there are lots of different ways, and at any stage in life, about choice, as you, to your point, I think, correct me if I'm not summarizing correctly, it's about choice, it's about taking opportunities and being sensible, not risking being totally homeless.
No, I would say I'm not sensible. I would just say that I don't go right. Like I've never been one of those people who thrives on the idea, well, you've got to break it, or you go bankrupt.
No,
I need my little
safety.
hidey bit over here to keep me going if all else fails. But yeah, you've got to give it a risk. But you also, yeah, you also got to just give it a go.
Yeah, think
Do
outside.
something on the side.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yes, it built up something as you did indeed. You're doing something, perhaps that was too much, doing the full-time day job and building up a full-time business, but there's no reason not to take that gamble. Frankie, this has been amazing. Now, you may or may not be aware that I usually ask my guests three sort of questions based on you remember the UK desert island disc?
I forgot that you
History.
do that.
Yes, exactly. Catch you unawares.
Okay.
You've traveled
I can't
over the
remember what they
place.
are though, so let's go.
So you're going to have some really real-time experience, perhaps, of being on desert islands or remote places. You're
Yeah.
on a desert island, you've got your fish, you've got your berries, and you'll be so capable of dealing with all this. What's the one luxury you would take with you? Not a boat, by the way. I'm going to stop you in case you say boat.
Damn it. So not a surfboard either. Can I have a toolkit, but if I promise not to use it to build stuff? Because I make books
Of
and you need hammers and saws and things to make books. So I would be quite happy getting the palm leaves out of the trees and making my books out of it. But
Fantastic.
I need some tools.
Yeah, you can have anything you want. Toolkit, that's amazing. So one luxury food that isn't available on the fish and the berries, what luxury food would you take? Or what food would you take? It doesn't have to be a luxury, but what treat would you take?
Not really a foodie. I eat everything and I love veggie. I love fruit and veg. So I try and think of probably
Maybe it's a
some
sauce.
pate or something. I
And what was
love
it?
pate. Pate,
Pate,
like
like
liver pate or something like. But all those kind of things, I think to myself, I could make that.
yes, exactly. Very good at things like that. Okay, and then
Scotch whiskey. Can I have that instead of food?
oh, so yeah, that it's a consumable, yes. Yeah, that's fair enough. We'll go for that. You
Really
go for
good
that.
vintage. Yeah.
And then I'm going to ask you two more questions. It's usually three. I'm going to cheat and ask you four. Music. What's the one piece of music? We'll assume you can play it somehow. What's the
Oh,
piece of music you would take?
uh, so I never give a short answer to a question. Can I give you a
That's
longer
fine.
answer
You can give
very
me a
quickly?
longer answer, but I'm going to
Um,
pin you down.
no, totally. I love music and I have a very eclectic taste. And my beautiful business partner got stuck in the 80s and hasn't moved on. And I've got friends, a lot of friends at my age who are like that, but I love everything. So if
Mhm.
I had to take one song, pick the one song, if it's only one song, I'd probably go with, I could cheat and have a really long classical piece, or I'd probably go with London Calling by The Clash. Never get
Okay.
old. Love that tune. And I can sing along to it, and I could probably make myself a little pretend guitar or something.
Out of those palm leaves. Now, I think I might guess which book you're going to choose, but you've got the faith book of your choice and you've got Shakespeare. What other book would you take with you, apart from the ones you're going to make in your toolkit, with your toolkit?
Yeah, well, yeah, but those are ones that somebody else writes in, so I can't take someone
Yeah,
with me to write in them. Um, I wouldn't need What Color Is My Parachute because I'd already have, I'm not working.
fair enough. Yeah. That's put me in my place then.
Yeah, no, I love that book and I recommend it to everyone. And there's another
And we're
one I'm
going to put it
just,
in the show notes.
I might send you another one I'm just going through as well, which is really good. But I think that if I was probably in, I would want something escapist. Can I have a trilogy?
Yeah, I'm sure it's in one cover.
Oh yeah, there's one called an old one. It's called The Chronicles of Thomas Covenant and the Unbeliever. And it was years ago. I read it when I was a teenager and I sent my mother out to buy the second one as a present. She said, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I said, "I want this." And it hadn't even been written yet.
Oh,
So I had to wait for it to be written. But there's loads in that. So it's about actually it's too long to explain the story, but it's got lots of different detail, lots of different, and each book is very different to the last. So that would keep me going. I could do the whole thing and then read it again and then read it again. So that would
fantastic.
be
And we'll put your choices in the show notes. And of course, Frankie, we can put your contact points and your
yeah,
websites in. So, and you're happy for people to reach out and say, hey,
yeah, absolutely.
that's really
I'm very passionate about. That's probably why I go on so much. Sorry, but and thank you for the opportunity because it is. I find it very rewarding to talk about this stuff more from the point of view of sharing it because there's nothing I like better than to see. I always joke with my team that I want you to be able to do my job so I can go and do something more interesting. But I always build someone to be able. You can do my job, and then I'll go over here, and I just there's nothing I love more than seeing someone succeed. And what you're doing, trying to give people the confidence and giving them the information and learning yourself all the time. I admire you very much. So, and thank you for the opportunity. Happy to talk to any of the people that, if anything comes up that people want to talk further about, happy to.
That's really kind. Thank you. And it will all be in the show notes. And I think you and I are on the same page, aren't we? It's about letting people know that they can do what they love, or there's a place to start, and there are people out there like yourself and so many of the other guests who are there to help. So thank you very
And the
much.
community. Can I quickly say the community is really important? So if you don't have a business partner, leverage off the community. When I did my master's, I had no idea, and I ended up with a WhatsApp group of people all around the world, and we studied together. So there's no reason that you can't get your confidence out of your fellow travelers.
Yeah, absolutely. And technology, we joked about years ago, jumped on a plane and it was a letter home, but the technology does enable that community now, isn't it? It's really passionate. I was going to say in final words, but anything to add, because you've given us so much, and thank you from the heart for what you've said. Any final words?
No, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. It's been a great pleasure. So, folks, don't forget to look in the show notes. It's been a very important episode, whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to the podcast. Once again, thank you very much to Frankie Bryant, who's given her time this morning. And with the time difference, really appreciate you making this time available for the audience. Thank you very much.